After the armistice in 1943, a Turinese lawyer and writer named Aldo Farinelli began working on a simple but clever idea, a tiny engine that could be fitted onto an ordinary bicycle. Defying wartime restrictions, he managed to build a working prototype by 1944. The little motor had a distinctive, high-pitched bark, and Farinelli jokingly called it the cucciolo, meaning puppy in Italian. At first glance, it didn't look like much, just a small auxiliary engine, but the timing couldn't have been better. Italy was struggling to rebuild, and people desperately needed affordable transportation. The cucciolo was light, practical, and remarkably fuel-efficient thanks to its four-stroke design. In a country where fuel was scarce and money even scarcer, that mattered a lot. And with its modest two-speed gearbox and reliable torque, this little puppy could even help a bicycle climb the hills of post-war Italy. Cucciolo models. Aldo Farinelli's clever little engine caught the attention of for Società Italiana Applicazioni Tecniche Autoaviatori, based in Turin. In July 1945, just weeks after the end of World War II, Seata announced its plans to put the cucciolo into production. It was the first new motorized design to emerge in post-war Europe, and demand surged almost immediately. To keep up, Seata sought a partner with greater manufacturing capacity, and that's where Ducati entered the picture. By June 1946, Ducati, then still operating under its original name, Società Scientifica Radio Brevetti Ducati, SSR, began producing cucciolo engines alongside Seata. These first Ducati-built motors, known as the Cucciolo T1, were identical to Seata's versions. They featured diagonally finned cylinders and an aluminum crankcase split vertically, with a 20-degree forward tilt in the cylinder. Inside, a steel connecting rod ran on roller bearings, while the crankshaft was supported by twin ball bearings. The cylinder head was distinctive for its rear-facing intake and exhaust ports, with twin overhead valves arranged in parallel. Instead of conventional push rods, the Cucciolo used pull rods located behind the cylinder, operated by a single cam housed within the crankcase. The exposed rockers and valve springs relied on a simple gravity-fed oiling system. Yet, despite the minimal lubrication, the engine proved exceptionally durable and soon gained a reputation for remarkable reliability. Power was transmitted through a gear-driven primary, engaging a wet, multi-plate metal clutch. The Cucciolo's two-speed gearbox was shifted using the bicycle pedals themselves. Pedals in the upright position selected neutral, pushing the right pedal forward, engage first gear, and the left pedal forward, engage second. A clutch lever sat on the left handlebar, with the throttle on the right, giving riders intuitive control. Designed to mount directly onto a bicycle frame, the Cucciolo used the existing chain for secondary drive and came with a small 2-liter fuel tank mounted above the rear wheel. Starting the engine was as simple as pedaling the bike with the motor engaged, just like an early moped. With fuel consumption reaching an incredible 275 miles per gallon, the Cucciolo became an instant success. By 1947, production had climbed to more than 240 units per day, with over 25,000 sold across Italy. Ducati soon took over full control of manufacturing and sales, even opening a new export office in Milan. To celebrate its growing success, Ducati commissioned composer Maestro Olivero to write a song about the Cucciolo, a tune that became a hit across Italy. Confident in their creation, Ducati sent engineer Aldo Loria to New York in 1947 to introduce the little motor to America. While the Cucciolo never quite conquered the U.S. market, it spread across much of the world and became the most successful micromotor of the post-war era. By 1948, Ducati's newly appointed chief engineer, Giovanni Fiorio, set out to refine the original Cucciolo engine. The result was the Cucciolo T2, a design focused on making the little motor easier and more efficient to produce. One of the most noticeable improvements was the introduction of a removable cylinder, simplifying maintenance and assembly. The cooling fins were now arranged horizontally, and the cylinder was fastened to a redesigned one-piece aluminum crankcase using a 4-stud flange. The cylinder head was also reworked, now featuring a forward-facing exhaust port, and an oil filler was added to the back of the crankcase for easier lubrication. The T2 came in 2 standard configurations, the Turismo and the Sport, with an optional high-performance variant known as the T2 Sport Special. This upgraded version featured a slightly larger piston, bringing the displacement to a full 50 cubic centimeters, and used a higher 8.9 to 1 compression ratio to produce around 2 horsepower at 5,700 revolutions per minute. When installed on a lightweight racing bicycle, it could reach speeds close to 40 miles per hour. Impressive for such a small engine. Even before the T2's release, the Cucciolo name had begun making waves in motorsport. As early as February 1947, modified versions were already winning races in the micromotore class, and the T2 Sport quickly became a favorite among private racers, marking the first of many factory-tuned Ducati racing engines. With sales climbing, Ducati introduced a simplified version called the T0 in 1949. Designed as a low-cost, fixed-speed model, it offered limited performance and quickly fell out of favor, disappearing after just a year. Then in 1950, the company introduced an updated T2, designated the T50, which incorporated several refinements, including a relocated oil filler, clutch improvements, a redesigned primary drive, and a more efficient carburetor. Around the same period, another version of the Cucciolo appeared, the T3. Fiorio continued to experiment, increasing the engine's capacity to 60 cubic centimeters and enclosing the previously exposed valve gear, which was now grease-lubricated for better protection and reliability. He also introduced a 3-speed transmission, separating the gear shift from the bicycle pedals, which were still used for starting the engine. The T3 was an important step forward. It formed the foundation for Ducati's first complete motorcycle. Before reaching that stage, however, the engine was first shown powering a small 3-wheeled prototype called the Girino. Although the Girino never entered production, the T3 itself was soon being used by private racers, eager to test its potential on the track. Despite its innovation, the T3 never matched the success of the smaller Cucciolo models. The competition was simply too strong, particularly from the Moto Guzzi, a 65 cubic centimeter rival that consistently outperformed it. Still, the T3 represented a crucial milestone, setting the stage for Ducati's transition from a micromotor manufacturer to a true motorcycle builder. In post-war Italy, racing wasn't just a sport, it was a national obsession. So it was only natural that Ducati's little Cucciolo engine found its way into the heat of competition. In February 1947, rider Mario Recchia gave the Cucciolo its first taste of victory in the micromotore racing class, which featured machines up to 50 cubic centimeters. The following year, Ducati offered its first purpose-built racing engine, the T2 Sport, available only by special order. The T2 Sport quickly earned a reputation for its tenacity on the track, especially in hill climb events, where the torque of its 4-stroke engine gave it an edge over lighter, faster 2-strokes. It also performed well on tight street circuits, proving both agile and reliable. By 1950, Ducati was ready to take things further, producing its first complete motorcycle, marking the end of the Cucciolo's role as just an add-on motor. Up until then, every Cucciolo racer had relied on frames made by outside manufacturers. That same year, Ducati made its official racing debut by supporting Ugo Tamorosi, who set out to break world records at the Monza circuit on March 5, 1950. At 56 years old, Tamorosi was an unlikely hero. Working in the basement of his Milan home, he meticulously tuned his engine, using a 9.5 to 1 compression ratio, a 12mm Dell'Orto carburetor, and a careful 50-50 mix of petrol and benzol. Keeping the revs under 3,500 RPM, he achieved 6 distance and 6 speed records, the fastest being 100 miles at 66 kilometers per hour. But Tamorosi wasn't done. In May 1950, alongside co-rider Glauco Zitelli and backed by Ducati's engineering chief Giovanni Fiorio, he returned to Monza with a full factory-prepared machine. The pair set 20 new records, including a 12-hour run at over 67 kilometers per hour. Later that year, Tamorosi and a team of riders added another 27 long-distance records, including the 3,000-kilometer at 66.3 kilometers per hour and the 48-hour record at 63.2 kilometers per hour, marks that would stand for nearly 5 years. Through 1951, Ducati continued racing with the Cucciolo and the new 65 Sport, earning a third-place finish in the Milano-Taranto road race with Franco Petrucci. The compact engine also proved capable off-road, earning Tamarozzi a silver medal at the International Six Days Trial held in Italy's rugged Valle Bergamasche region. Ducati 60. By the late 1940s, competition in the growing clip-on motor market had become fierce. Giovanni Fiorio's 60cc T3 engine, introduced in 1948, inspired Ducati to take a bold new step: the creation of a complete motorcycle, built entirely under its own name. Although Ducati had little to no experience in building frames, many small manufacturers were already designing special chassis to accommodate the Cucciolo engine. One of these was Caproni of Rovereto, a company better known for its pre-war aircraft production. Caproni developed a tubular steel frame with rear suspension, and Ducati soon partnered with them to supply frames for what would become its first true motorcycle, the Ducati 60. The model debuted in 1949, but the collaboration was short-lived. By May 1950, Caproni decided to produce its own motorcycles, ending the partnership. The first version of the Ducati 60, released in 1949, was considered remarkably advanced for its time and quite distinct from the updated version that appeared in March 1950. Its engine was largely derived from the Cucciolo T3, retaining the pull rod valve operation, but featured a modified bore and stroke, higher compression, and a slightly larger Weber carburetor for better performance. Caproni's pressed steel frame housed a telescopic front fork with coil springs, while the rear suspension used a cantilever design with a single spring beneath the seat and two friction dampers. This model was also the first Ducati to carry the DM, Ducati Meccanica, engine and frame designation, a marking that would become a hallmark of Ducati's future motorcycles. Ducati 60 Sport and 65 Sport, a step forward. As production of the Ducati 60 got underway, Giovanni Fiorio was already developing a new engine, a 65 cubic centimeter four-stroke with pushrod-operated overhead valves. Although its design drew from the Cucciolo, this new engine would become the foundation of Ducati's small-capacity range for nearly 2 decades. It featured a larger bore, an improved combustion chamber, and a bigger carburetor, all contributing to a noticeable boost in power. The cylinder head layout was unconventional. The intake port was on the left, while the exhaust exited on the right. The new engine also introduced a kickstarter positioned on the right-hand side, a small but welcome innovation for riders. At first, this engine was fitted into the Caproni frame used by the Ducati 60 and sold as the 60 Sport. After Ducati ended its collaboration with Caproni, the company released a revised version with a new chassis. The design still used a pressed steel open frame and telescopic front fork, but now included a swing-arm rear suspension with twin shock absorbers and space for a rear luggage rack. In 1952, the model was rebranded as the 65 Sport, identical mechanically, but refreshed with new colors and styling touches. That same year, a major change came to Ducati's leadership. In October 1951, Dr. Giuseppe Montano took over as director of Ducati Meccanica. A passionate motorcyclist himself, Montano immediately pushed for modernization, commissioning updated designs and expanding Ducati's racing ambitions. Ducati 65T and 65TL. When the Ducati 98 debuted in 1952, the older 65cc model shifted into a more practical role. It was now offered as the 65T, Turismo, and the 65TL, Turismo Lusso. Both featured a new pressed steel open frame, similar to the 98's with a curved tubular rear section. The rear luggage rack was simplified and mounted directly above the fender. The 65 Sport was discontinued by 1954, but the 65T and 65TL remained in production until 1958, serving as reliable, economical transportation during Italy's economic recovery. The Cucciolo evolves. Ducati 48. The success of Tamarozzi and Zitelli's record-breaking efforts gave the Cucciolo a second win. In 1952, Ducati launched the Ducati 48, its first complete motorcycle in the Cucciolo lineage. Combining elements of the T2 and T3 designs, the 48 featured a pressed steel rigid frame and a 48 cubic centimeter engine with enclosed valves, grease lubrication, and a 3-speed gearbox. Its integrated 4-liter fuel tank and built-in tire pump emphasized convenience. Up front was a parallelogram suspension, and the 48 was fitted with twin drum brakes, a notable upgrade from its bicycle-based predecessors. While not particularly fast or flashy, the Ducati 48 excelled in fuel efficiency, reportedly achieving an impressive 90 kilometers per liter. Variants included the Type G and Type DG, which used tubular bicycle-style frames, and the short-lived Cyclo scooter, which failed to gain traction. The ambitious Ducati Cruiser. By the early 1950s, scooters were taking Italy by storm. To compete with Vespa and Lambretta, Ducati decided to create something revolutionary, a luxury 4-stroke scooter unlike anything else on the market. Designed by Giovanni Fiorio and styled by the renowned Ghia design house, the Ducati Cruiser was introduced in 1952. It was the first scooter in the world with a 4-stroke engine and an automatic transmission. Initially producing 12 horsepower, later reduced to 7.5 due to government speed limits, it was powered by a single Dell'Orto carburetor feeding directly into the cylinder head. The Cruiser also introduced features far ahead of its time: electric start, a 12-volt electrical system, and a hydraulic torque converter that formed part of its complex automatic gearbox. The rear suspension used a horizontal damper under the engine, while the front relied on a unique hydraulic setup. Despite its innovation, the Cruiser was too heavy, too complicated, and too expensive for the market. Plagued by mechanical issues and poor reliability, it failed commercially and was discontinued by 1954, though its advanced engineering would inspire future Ducati designs. Ducati 98, the next step. Unveiled alongside the Cruiser at the 1952 Milan show, the Ducati 98 represented a more traditional approach to motorcycle design. Still engineered by Fiorio, it featured a 98 cubic centimeter overhead valve 4-stroke engine with a forward-facing exhaust, rear carburetor, and a distinctive external oil line feeding the valve gear. The cylinder was tilted 25 degrees forward, and the two valves sat at a 100-degree angle. Early versions used a 3-speed gearbox, later upgraded to 4. The pressed steel frame gave the bike a sturdy, modern appearance, and the 98's 10-liter fuel tank and balanced fenders completed the motorcycle look Ducati had long aspired to. By 1953, Ducati expanded the lineup with the 98T, Turismo, and 98TL, Turismo Lusso. These models added larger tanks, dual seats, alloy wheel rims, and improved styling. Then came the 98 Sport, Ducati's first true performance model, featuring a 4-speed transmission, larger carburetor, and even a finned oil cooler. Its successor, the 98 Supersport, launched in 1954, introduced sleeker styling and a handlebar fairing. Though production was brief, the 98 series marked a turning point for Ducati, especially after the arrival of engineer Fabio Taglioni in 1954. Under his guidance, Ducati's racing efforts were transformed, leading to the creation of the Mariana and setting the stage for Ducati's legendary racing legacy.